Hey YouTubers, this is the Gold Standard 924 coming at you with Chapter 4 in my Wrestling Reimagining series for you guys today. So continuing where we left off in my revisionist booking for WWE 2006, I'll be tackling the granddaddy of them all, Wrestlemania 22. Now, this was a very weird show overall, and while it wasn't necessarily the worst WrestleMania that I've seen, at the same time it wasn't necessarily the greatest WrestleMania. And it was a sort of a pay-per-view that kind of felt like something you would see on a minor pay-per-view show like a Judgment Day or a Vengeance or like an Unforgiven of sorts. I mean, looking at this card, I mean, did have a couple handful of great matches on here, so it wasn't entirely bad per se. You had Edge versus Mick Foley in a hardcore match, the Money in the Bank ladder match, Trish and Mickey for the women's title. And there was a couple other matches that were on here, like the triple threat for the world heavyweight title. And surprisingly enough, Rey Mysterio, who was the winner of the Royal Rumble match to challenge for the world heavyweight title, surprisingly did not headline the pay-per-view. The main event they had here instead was John Cena and Triple H for the WWE Championship, which is a very sort of weird kind of match because the Chicago crowd, which really turned on John Cena despite being a babyface going into this event, and Triple H, the intended heel, was all of a sudden getting cheered, and this kind of really felt pretty unusual and a little uncomfortable in some places because this was something that was very unheard of at this time. Now, I will do my best to restructure the card. Now, there will be some matches that I will keep on here, so it won't be a complete overhaul necessarily. But without further ado, I just want to take this opportunity to get started and to really kick off how I would have rebooked WrestleMania 22, sort of like in my own vision per se. So without further ado, let's get started here. Now, what I would open up for WrestleMania 22 would be for the United States Championship, Chris Benoit to defend the belt against Rey Mysterio. And this would be a Eddie Guerrero tribute match of sorts to open up the show in Chicago. And you could build this up very simple. It doesn't have to be too elaborate per se. That two of these wrestlers have wrestled all around the world. They appreciate the sport just as much as they did with Eddie Guerrero. They were such a big influence to him that without Eddie Guerrero, they wouldn't get as far in their professional wrestling career or, in WWE's case, sports entertainment. But I would actually run this match between these two, and surprising enough, when I looked at some of the matches that both Benoit and Ray had around 2006, that they never even had a one-on-one match with each other. And even though, granted, they did have a series of matches back around like 2002 or 2003-ish, but they never really had like an actual one-on-one match, even during this time. And I want to really utilize this opportunity to spotlight Benoit and Mysterio, give them something to do. And it wouldn't necessarily be any sort of personal vendetta. There wouldn't be any sort of negative remarks on Eddie Guerrero or anything like that. So this would be sort of a battle of respect between two athletes with the same passion that have been wrestling all around the world and wrestled around the same promotions at one point and another. And I would have Rey Mysterio go over Benoit here and walk out as the new United States champion. And after that match, they have a handshake at the end. Chavo Guerrero could maybe come out and raise both Benoit and Mysterio's arms to the crowd. And that's how I would basically do the opening match there. So it wouldn't necessarily be like the traditional face versus heel dynamic of sorts, but this would be a sort of a match just to really close out the Eddie Guerrero and his uh, just the overall chapter of what happened with him after his death, and just paying tribute, paying homage to Eddie Guerrero, and try to put on the best match possible, which would be something that he would want to see if Eddie had been alive. I mean, nothing too derogative for that matter. Then we have is the Money in the Bank ladder match, which will consist of 6 competitors. Now, the previous year's Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 21 was strictly towards superstars of Raw, but the following Money in the Bank ladder match at WrestleMania 22, this would be the first of which this would be a sort of an interpromotional match of sorts. So not only would have 3 wrestlers from Raw, but you also have 3 wrestlers from SmackDown being involved as well. So for Monday Night Raw, we have Carlito, Shelton Benjamin, Rob Van Dam, who was just returning during this time. And on SmackDown, we have Bobby Lashley, Booker T, and Matt Hardy. I kind of structured around the competitors a little bit, just changing around certain guys who would be involved. So as opposed to like Ric Flair and Finlay being involved, I put Carlito and Booker T. Definitely keep this Money in the Bank ladder match, and RVD is going to go over here, which I didn't have much of a problem with. I thought that was the right call to do, and especially with the especially with the crowd in Chicago, being being how hardcore wrestling fans that they are. So, and Rob Van Dam's kind of is one of those examples of the some of the die-hard wrestling fans that have tuned into RVD since he was in ECW. So I would definitely have RVD go over here. Now, third match I would have is yet another interpromotional match of sorts, and this would be a match between the Nature Boy Ric Flair taking on John Bradshaw Layfield. With JBL is that initially he wasn't included in the WrestleMania card that year, and he's just very infuriated because he just lost that match to Kurt Angle at No Way Out, and Bradshaw just really feels a bit down on himself because not only that he's not going after the World Heavyweight title, but he is not being in talks of being involved in a match at WrestleMania, which kind of really boggles his mind, and he's just claiming that he's been in the company for such a long time, and he deserves the respect that he gets. I mean, just a year ago, he was on top of the world. He was the WWE champion, and ever since he lost that title belt, Bradshaw's career has just been going downhill. I mean, he's got Jillian Hall by his side at this time, and Jillian Hall is also providing a bit of like a motivation speech and really assuring Bradshaw and making him feel a little bit uplifting, and that he shouldn't feel very down on himself, and that there's going to be more opportunities for him down the road. Teddy Long comes out and tries to assess the situation at hand. JBL is given an opportunity to, because this is especially at a bigger stage, and when Teddy Long does acknowledge and understand what JBL has been going through, so he offers JBL a sort of deal that he will indeed compete in a WrestleMania match. And there's actually one thing I want you to do, Bradshaw. You could find a particular opponent that you could find. I mean, it doesn't have to be on SmackDown, but it could be a wrestler on Monday Night Raw. And by Saturday night's main event, Bradshaw, that will be your time to call out whoever wrestler that you want to face at WrestleMania. Doesn't have to be on SmackDown, but it could be anyone on Monday Night Raw as well. And it turns out that the Nature Boy Ric Flair volunteers to be JBL's opponent because he's, with Ric Flair, he is known for being the dirtiest player of the game. With JBL's sake, he's sort of kind of like that in a way. I mean, both of those 2 wrestlers have a tendency to rely on underhanded tactics. It's sort of a clash of personalities between the 2 wrestlers, and Ric Flair is also known for using underhanded tactics, especially throughout most of his wrestling career. And you could kind of emphasize on that theme as a way to build up for your match at WrestleMania. Something very simple, but I think it could be very effective. I mean, Ric Flair is a solid talker. JBL is a solid talker as well. So I think they could really gel well in a match together. And I would have Ric Flair going over JBL in this match. Vintage Ric Flair, roll up using the tights, 1, 2, 3. Flair goes over in that interpromotional match. Once again, Bradshaw's just on the downward slide, and who knows how far he's going to crash and burn. I mean, it's only a matter of time. Now we get to the Women's Championship bout. The anticipated rivalry commences here at Mania. Trish Stratus will defend her belt against Mickie James. This all kind of goes way back towards the end of 2005, where Mickie James debuts as Trish Stratus's #1 fan, and they've been doing things together. Mickie James signed a contract, and they're kind of going for this, going for that, helping each other out. And then at some point down the road, Trish starts to realize the darker side of Mickie James, and that even though she's one of the nicest people that she's ever met, at the same time, however, the more she starts to really get an understanding of Mickie James, the more she starts to get to know her, there's something about Mickie James that really catches in Trish's eye, and she starts to get a little more suspicious as the months go by. Around Saturday night's main event, they were in a tag team match. They ended up winning that tag team match at Saturday night's main event. Mickie James owes Trish an apology for all the times that she's been taking up her space and getting into Trish's personal business. And then basically it plays out the same way as it did, and Mickie James ends up turning on Trish and even delivering a chick kick on the Trish Stratus. That's basically how you would set up the Women's Championship bout. And after all this anticipation, after all the shenanigans that prevented Mickie James from getting that opportunity to face her favorite wrestler, she finally gets that wish at WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all. And Mickie James is going to go over Trish Stratus just like how it happened. So I don't necessarily have to reiterate too much about how the match will play out, but I definitely really like this match, so I definitely really keep this. And Mickie James as the women's champion was the right call, so definitely would put the belt on her. We will definitely have a Smackdown versus Raw tag team match where the World Tag Team Champions, the Big Show and Kane, will take on the Smackdown Tag Team Champions, M&M, which wouldn't necessarily be so much build-up compared to Trish and Mickie. I probably would have get Trish and Mickie a little more time, considering that I took away Edge versus Mick Foley. I'll let you know that. So I think Trish and Mickie would definitely get a lot more time than they did, which may seem a little unusual at that time since women's matches weren't necessarily like that long. But I would definitely, knowing Trish and Mickie, I think they could do some more creative things with how the match would flow. But Big Show and Kane, and as far as their opponents, M&M, this would be a TV-style match, really. And I would have Big Show and Kane go over M&M. Not necessarily a very long match, but also to kind of get Big Show and Kane on the card since they don't really have as much things to do. And, even M&M has been presented as a dominant tag team on SmackDown, and that I did not want them to put them on like a pre-show or a dark match. I think they were a pretty key important part in the tag team division at this time to be left off the main card, so to speak. But I'll give them an opportunity to spotlight two teams and to, in Big Show and Kane's going to go over. Simple as that. Now, the casket match, I would keep Undertaker taking on Mark Henry. Now, originally I wanted to do Undertaker and Kurt Angle, but I just wasn't able to work around that sort of booking, especially since I'm going by what was going on at that time with Batista, and his injury kind of played a huge factor as to why the WrestleMania 22 card kind of felt like somewhat wasted potential in a way. And unfortunately, I was not able to do Taker and Angle at WrestleMania. But I would keep the Undertaker Mark Henry casket match, even though it wasn't necessarily the greatest match in the entire world. But, Mark Henry was just coming in 2006 very hot and going through a reign of destruction and taking out Batista and having the most eliminations at the 2006 Royal Rumble. But even though he didn't necessarily win that match per se, he ended up destroying Bobby Lashley, and now he sets his eyes out on The Undertaker, and he even cost The Undertaker that Triple Threat World title match later that night at No Way Out. And Undertaker's going to go over Mark Henry. Now we get to the Chicago Street Fight. And I would have the Triple H and Shawn Michaels reunite as D-Generation X, taking on Shane and Vince McMahon. So how exactly does this all come out? Shawn Michaels, he was having his beef with Vince McMahon, which happened even during this time as well. Late 2005, going to early 2006. And even Vince McMahon just doing all he can to really humiliate Shawn Michaels, making his life a living hell. And even going out his way to have him and his former tag partner, Marty Jannetty, to join the Kiss My Ass Club. And Triple H, as far as his role in this feud is concerned, stems from the fact that he lost that qualifying round to enter the Royal Rumble match, so therefore he was not able to qualify for the 30-man Royal Rumble. And thanks to, Vince McMahon and even Shane McMahon, who attacked Triple H after losing that match to Kurt Angle on Raw. So Vince and Shane have been kind of making both Shawn and Hunter and really just making their lives a living hell as well. And because of Triple H and Shawn Michaels and their heated rivalry even a couple years prior, this wouldn't necessarily be like something that would be resolved very easily. And that would be acknowledged, especially in the weeks leading into WrestleMania. What happened here is that Triple H and Shawn, they'll cross paths, and because of their estranged relationship, Shawn maintains his hostility towards Hunter for all the turmoil that they've caused to each other. Triple H goes on to say that he is not asking for an apology, and admits that he confesses that he hasn't necessarily made the best decisions in his career, and he understands it will take more than just a simple hug for him and Shawn to be on good terms. However, one thing they do have in common is that lately the boss and the boss's son has screwed him at every opportunity, at every chance that they get. Shawn, the odds are just stacked 2-1 against you, alluding to when Shane McMahon eliminated Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble. So I would definitely keep it at that. Shawn, I know you may not want a partner, but since there isn't anyone in the back that's volunteering to help you, how about we say we even the odds? You and I, for the first time in over a decade, that we will team up, you and I, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, for the first time, that we will team up to face Vince and Shane McMahon. And I know you and I haven't really seen eye to eye for the past couple years. I mean, this isn't some sort of prank or a hoax like it was 4 years ago. This is, I definitely really mean it, Shawn. And this won't be a standard tag team match. Since WrestleMania will be in Chicago, what do we say? How about we crank up the violence and make this a street fight? Now, I understand, Shawn, that this is your choice, and I respect that if you aren't willing to be your partner. But what do you say, Shawn? What do you think? Shawn takes a moment to ponder. He hesitates for a little bit, thinking back to the last time that they attempted that reuniting. Triple H laid him out. And after giving much thought, and despite what happened, Shawn just looks at Triple H. He knows how serious that he looks. And he goes on the mic and he tells him that he accepts to be Shawn Michaels' tag team partner. And that the match is set for WrestleMania. DX, the McMahons, Chicago Street Fight, April 2nd. We could do the same spots that we did with Shawn and Vince McMahon, where Shawn did that elbow drop from the top of the ladder onto the table to Vince McMahon. So we would keep basically some of the spots that they did from WrestleMania, and maybe even having Triple H handcuff Shane McMahon at some point. But the fact of the matter is that DX, especially in the crowd like Chicago, they would really, really go nuts. I mean, it's one thing that Shawn and Hunter ended up doing like a DX crotch chop in their own respective matches, but I think you could really get a lot more out of especially at WrestleMania. It's like DX for the first time in years that these two founders of the stable, now a tag team, have finally reunited, and they're gonna go balls to the walls against those damn McMahons that have screwed them, in the months leading into this pay-per-view event. And I will definitely have DX go over Shane and Vince McMahon. And now we get to the two main event matches of this particular event. And one of the two matches here will be for the WWE Championship, whereas Edge going in as the champion defending the belt against John Cena. And basically, this stems from the previous WrestleMania where Edge was the winner of the 2005, the first ever Money in the Bank match. And he's been holding that briefcase for almost a year, but he held that briefcase from April all the way up to January at New Year's Revolution. And he ends up cashing in his Money in the Bank clause to challenge John Cena for the WWE title. Edge ends up spearing John Cena to become the WWE champion, ending John Cena's long title reign at this point. What we would have done a little bit differently is that John Cena would be out of action and off television for about a month or so. Not necessarily too long, but off in a way where John Cena has been slowly recovering after the sustaining damage, some of the injuries that he sustained from the Elimination Chamber match, and how he had to really go through hell in that steel structure at New Year's Revolution. So after a while, John Cena, he ends up coming back around February, while Edge has been spending the past couple weeks while Cena was gone successfully defending the belt against the likes of the Big Show and Shawn Michaels, and even like someone like Shelton Benjamin, who uses the IC title as sort of the reason why he's the number one contender to challenge Edge, and Edge would end up going over Shelton Benjamin. And after that successful title defense, John Cena out of nowhere ambushes Edge. The crowd goes crazy. The announcers are going crazy as well. It's like, with Joey Styles, he was like, wait a minute, that's John Cena. We haven't seen him since New Year's Revolution. And really try to put it over John Cena coming back. And, he's just pounding Edge. And this is just an all-out brawl that's just spiraling out of control. You have, like, referees coming in to restrain two of those competitors. But, John Cena is just continuing to go after Edge, and all this commotion that's been going on. And so the following week on Raw, John Cena would be sort of like hijacking Raw in a way. It was sort of like in WCW where Macho Man Randy Savage would open up Nitro, and he'd be sitting in the middle of the ring with a steel chair, and he'd be like, hijacking Nitro, and that no one else was going to wrestle in the match unless Macho Man would leave the ring. And, you had all these like wrestlers coming out to kind of convince Macho Man to get out of the ring, but Macho Man refuses. And they even did it with Stone Cold in 2002 in WWE during his whole feud with the NWO. I want to do something like that with John Cena and really show, even as the Doctor of Thugonomics, especially since he was still the rapper, also show a lot more aggression to his character. And that would be kind of something that I would do with John Cena. It's like he's not, being like a stand-up comedian like he tends to be at times, but he's just being kind of like kind of a bit of a badass in his own way. And he'd be sitting on the steel chair, and he's just threatening to hijack Raw until he gets his WWE title rematch. And he felt that he got screwed over that, the fact that he lost the belt when he was not at it in 100% health. Then Vince McMahon comes out and he insists John Cena that if he doesn't get out of the ring, that he will threaten to suspend him. And suspending him, he would have to miss out WrestleMania. But despite that, John Cena's like, okay, so what you gonna do about it? And, I'm still gonna get that title shot down the road. It's just a matter of when I'm gonna get that title shot. And so Vince McMahon, he's just holding his head for a moment. He's just, very frustrated that John Cena is just playing all these games, but Vince McMahon isn't having it any longer. He sighs and he gives it a lot of thought. John Cena, here's what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to get Edge out here. I'm going to call him, and he's going to be here later tonight. And when he does, he is going to give the decision of whether or not he will face you at WrestleMania. And thus, Edge ends up coming out later that night, and he's just laughing his ass off because he knows that John Cena is going to go after that WWE title. He knows he wants that belt because he's been out for quite some time, and now Cena's back. It's like, you know what, Cena? Yeah, I've been holding this belt while you were away, and I've been the guy that's been bringing in all the ratings and bringing all the fans that paid their ticket to see me wrestle in front of this very ring, in front of this very arena, per se. And what makes you think, John Cena, that, even though you may be one of the most top rated superstars of this decade, that you may be the top wrestler here on Raw, the fact of the matter is that while there are your lovers, there's also your haters. And granted, I have my fair share of haters as well. But John Cena, just because you may be the fan favorite, that doesn't necessarily make you the unanimously beloved guy on television. But I can understand from your eyes that you are willing to have a fair match against me, and so be it. WrestleMania, you and I go toe to toe against the Doctor of Thugonomics, the Chain Gang Soldier, and I will definitely wouldn't mind taking you on, John Cena, in a fair one-on-one match. Just a traditional, properly sanctioned match. Nothing out of the last minute. You want to be in tip-top shape, so be it, Cena. I'm going to give it 100% as well. And I won't go easy on you, man. WrestleMania 22, Edge versus John Cena for the WWE Championship. The match happens. Some involvement from Lita, which will be expected as well. Cena's just going to play up a lot more aggression. And even despite that, Edge is going to come out on top, and he's going to retain the WWE Championship against John Cena. Now we get to the World Heavyweight Championship bout. Randy Orton going as the champion, defending the belt against Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle won the 2006 Royal Rumble match, and using that clause, he ends up going to Smackdown to challenge the World Heavyweight Champion. Randy Orton successfully retained the belt in a triple threat match at No Way Out, and now he is going into WrestleMania, taking on the Olympic gold medalist. This would be sort of a thing where it wouldn't necessarily be like the most elaborate build in the world, because I was intending to do Batista and Randy Orton had Batista not gotten hurt, but unfortunately, with Batista, he had to sit out of WrestleMania that year. But he was on the show during the backstage segment with Randy Orton, and he said something that by WrestleMania 23 that Batista would be World Heavyweight Champion and stuff. So I'll definitely keep those segments, especially since that would be, in this universe, that this would be a lot more effective. This time, in my universe, Randy Orton is the World Heavyweight Champion. So this kind of also Batista also has his eyes out on Kurt Angle, saying that he doesn't care about who's the champion. But by the time I'm back, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna beat any one of you guys to take that world heavyweight title belt that I never lost. Something to that effect. And Batista's going to be sitting front row in the crowd just watching Randy Orton and Kurt Angle unfold. Now, Kurt Angle is no stranger to holding the gold, and he's fought in numerous competitive matches against the many greats. To him, wrestling is everything that he stands for, and emphasizing the key word when discussing Wrestle and Wrestlemania is a value that he holds very dearly. Kurt Angle, being the guy that's been on top for quite some time, but he hasn't really held the world title in many years. And Kurt Angle, having won the Royal Rumble, finally gets that moment that he's been going after the title so many occasions, but 9 times out of 10, he's always coming up short, or he's coming up very close. But even despite that, the song remains the same. As far as Randy Orton's role in the build up to the match is concerned, in the weeks leading into WrestleMania 22, Randy Orton would cut these poetics driven promos talking about destiny and what it means to him as an individual. And Randy Orton would repeat the words destiny in each line. Randy Orton talking about it was destiny that brought him to the WWE, that it was destiny that he would end up being the world heavyweight champion despite being in the company in such a short amount of time. And it would be destiny that at WrestleMania that he would headline the pay-per-view, and that destiny will be that once the smokes are cleared and he lays Kurt Angle to waste, he guarantees that for a fact that Randy Orton will walk out of WrestleMania still your world heavyweight champion. And that's how I would build up Randy Orton as far as his role in the main event of WrestleMania is concerned. So we have the match between Orton and Angle. Batista's in the front row of the crowd, so his presence will likely distract Randy Orton, and we'll play upon that during the middle of the match where Randy Orton starts getting into Batista's face, and then even Kurt Angle ambushing Randy Orton. But the match plays out basically a fair and square one-on-one match. There's not really any shenanigans or outside interference. I mean, granted, Batista's in the front row of the seat, but he's hardly even doing anything. He's just watching the match unfold in front of his eyes. And you gotta think that, especially with Batista, it's like, man, that should be me wrestling in the main event. So I think we'll have like the announcers, like Michael Cole or Taz, try to play that up. It's like, Batista can wish that he was still healthy, that he would be competing at WrestleMania had it not been for his injury. That it would have been him that be the one that is competing in the ring. But unfortunately, fate took a turn in another direction. There'll be some occasions where Randy Orton is trying to counter the ankle lock. After a while, Kurt Angle manages to get that ankle lock, and there's no way at this point, especially with Kurt Angle utilizing the knee bar as part of the ankle lock move, which is preventing Randy Orton from getting close to the ropes as he could. So after a bit of being a bit reluctant, Randy Orton eventually taps out. Kurt Angle is the new world heavyweight champion. Crowd cheers. The confetti falls from the rafters. We could have Kurt Angle's family, if they are in attendance at this time, to maybe come out there and celebrate with him. And that would be how I would close out WrestleMania, and having Kurt Angle just walk up the aisle holding that World Heavyweight title, raising his arms to the crowd, and that's how I would close out the pay per view there. So let me know what you think about my WrestleMania 22 card down in the comments section below. Tell me what your thoughts are about how I restructured the WrestleMania card. And yeah, stay tuned as I will do Chapter 5 as I will book the Raw pay-per-view Backlash. So stick around if you're still interested. Thank you all guys for watching. And until then, this is the Gold Standard Caesar 924 signing out.